Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Kristen Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton, PhD candidate and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron.
All right, guys, today we have a good topic for you. It's all about nutrition. We've done some nutrition topics in the past, but we feel that there is a major void in nutritional information for strength athletes and how it relates to being healthy. So a lot of us count our macros and we care about how food is going to help us with our strength gains. But your nutrition is super important to how your body functions. So as an athlete, you're putting a lot of stress on your body. So it's imperative that you eat in a manner that supports that. So
can I jump in for just like 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Totally agree with everything. I'm not jumping in to argue with Kristen. One thing I will say is, you know, when you follow people on social media, big athletes and whatnot, or even companies, they always boast about all this junk shit that they're eating and they're still getting strong. So an unhealthy diet or unhealthy foods are what's the word I'm looking for? They're almost like worshipped in this strength world. They're like, oh my God, look, I ate 6 donuts and then I deadlifted 500 pounds. And you're like, oh, congratulations, that's great. But we forget that there's like a million other things happening in the back burner, hopefully, as long as they have a healthy diet, right? Right. To lead to that 500-pound deadlift.
Right.
Okay, continue.
So,
Smart
stuff. So we're not just talking about like the quantity of food. The quantity of food is very important, especially as a strength athlete. But I would argue that the quality of your food is almost more important. So I think that if you need 100 grams of carbs and you're going to get that by eating donuts,
you're gonna be sick as fuck.
You might not feel so well. But also that there's not as many vitamins and minerals and nutrients and antioxidants in that stuff. It's kind of void of all of like the nutrients that your body needs to do its processes. So yeah, while the actual sugar and carbohydrates helped you lift some heavy weight.
Right. In the moment. A very short period of time.
Right. You're creating some excess work for your body and some excess inflammation. And, down the road, this habit will probably catch up to you in the form of decreased immune system and decreased joint and tissue health. So we'll get into all that.
I'm not saying, fuck, if you want to go eat 6 donuts on a Sunday and then go PR, go do it. Don't eat 6 donuts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
That's excessive.
That's too much.
What we're trying to talk about.
That's too much. Yeah, so I think that there's a void in what is a healthy diet for general population, and then how do you pair that to a healthy diet for strength athletes, because we have unique needs. And as women, we have even more unique needs because there's this whole hormone component that's really sensitive. Guys have hormones too. Their hormones aren't quite as sensitive as ours. So, or I should say their bodies aren't quite as sensitive to hormone changes as ours. So anyway, what the hell is a healthy diet?
That's a great question. Obviously not 6 donuts since we wrapped on that.
So I think that a healthy diet, you guys are going to find out at some point during this that Mary and I disagree on a couple things, and that's okay. Scientists can disagree. Happens all the time.
Yes.
But one of the things that we absolutely agree on is having a diet that is based on fruits and veggies.
Whole foods.
Whole foods. Yeah, absolutely. Whole foods. So,
but definitely fruits and veggies.
Right. So that is something I think a lot of people are missing in their diet. It's really, really, really important. And if you are counting macros, and especially if you're new to counting macros, getting fruits and veggies in there can be kind of a pain in the ass.
Right, because you think about it and you're like, 30 grams of carbs for a banana.
Right.
And you're like, well, I could have this instead. But you forget the banana is just a banana.
Right.
There's all this other crap in it that's good for you.
And it's also, I would say too, that it's, it's hard to like plan out because you're like, okay, how much broccoli can I eat and how much spinach and how much this and it starts to get overwhelming especially when you're new to counting macros. Mm-hmm. So, my argument would be, maybe if you have to blow your macros to eat some broccoli and spinach, like, that's okay. Like, I would prefer you do that than not eat them.
Honestly, like, 300 grams of broccoli has, like, 5 carbs.
Yeah, it's, like, very little. Yeah.
Unless you are cutting for some figure competition and legit 5 carbs means something to you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, whatever. Eat your broccoli.
Right. So a lot of people would argue, like, oh, well, I take a multivitamin, so it's fine. I don't need to take this stuff. And, like, you can't just do that because, so fruits and veggies are really high in vitamins and minerals that your body needs. So if you've ever taken biochemistry, you know that these are actually substances that go on to help chemical reactions occur in your body that are vital to life.
Yeah. And these are only compound or vitamins and minerals that we've studied as scientists.
Right.
There's still some things to this day we're like, oh my God, I can't believe this vegetable has this component and it causes this. How did we not know that?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it becomes an essential component to your diet. And we have known about it for however long.
Exactly.
And that's not in your multivitamin. I guarantee that.
Right. So because fruits and vegetables, there are more than 8,000 phytonutrients. 8,000.
That's many.
Yeah. And they have an anti-inflammatory effect, phytonutrients too. They have an anti-proliferative and anti-cancer benefits, which basically means it's going to help your body prevent cancer. Anti-proliferative means that it's going to help stop the growth of rapid cell division, which is cancer.
Right. Because really in your body, there's nothing besides hair and fingernails and skin that rapidly divide. And even that is relatively controlled. Right. That's why when people go under chemo, they lose their hair and their fingernails don't grow that fast, is because they are rapidly dividing. Cancer obviously is more rapidly dividing, but they are rapidly dividing enough that the chemo drugs attack those cells. Right. Sorry, sciencey.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's really good tidbit, because I remember when I learned that the first time, I was like, oh, that's why they lose their hair? It's really fascinating. Okay, so phytonutrients, super important. And you have to vary your fruits and vegetables. Like, you can't eat the same exact fruits and veggies every day. Like, you can't just eat, like, asparagus, banana, apple, spinach, broccoli. Like, that can't be, like, the 5 that you eat every day.
Which is probably why one of the reasons the big bodybuilding diet, that was like broccoli and chicken 7 times a day. Besides the fact that that's disgusting, that you're not varying and you can get very unhealthy very quick.
Absolutely. Sorry,
I keep throwing off your train of thought.
No, this is good. I love it. Keep doing it. So yeah, we have to rely on a variety of fruits and vegetables, and they should really make up the bulk of your diet. Right. And keep in mind that we're not just talking about, like, when we talk about veggies, we're not just talking about the green veggies. Also,
purple veggies are one of the best ones. Red
cabbage.
What's it called?
There's purple potatoes.
There's purple potatoes. Seen them? Purple sweet potatoes, so not just like regular potatoes. And then
kohlrabi?
No, it's like a root veggie. What's it called? It's purple.
A beet?
Beet!
Oh!
A beet!
Beets. I love beets. Funny story, one time I make, like, all these, like, crazy concoctions with, like, veggies, like smoothie veggie stuff. And I like to put frozen beets in them.
They're so good for you.
They're so good for you. I personally love the flavor of beets, but it's just, I like them just cooked. But anyhow, I was making a smoothie for my husband one day, and he's like a smoothie,
snob.
No, I'm the smoothie snob. Oh. He's like a smoothie wuss. And so I was like trying to make him something healthy that I thought would also, like, appeal to his palate. And I really failed because there were beets in it, and then there was milk because he wanted milk as the base. And he makes fun of me to this day. Like, he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm really hungry. Do you think you could make me a beet and milk smoothie?"
That sounds disgusting.
It had a bunch of other stuff in it, but okay, it was an epic fail. He didn't like it. I wouldn't have drank it because the milk would have made me, like, shit my pants. So we're just... Anyway, but I would have drank it otherwise. Okay.
So what we were saying is veggies are not just green things. They're purple things, they're yellow things, they're orange things.
Yeah,
and the more all the colors.
Yeah, the more colors. So, like, they high level nutritionists talk about eating the rainbow. Yeah. So eat a variety of colors because the things that make veggies have color are super important for your health.
They're what make all of the enzymes and proteins in your body function the way that they need to function.
Right.
And specific ones go to specific enzymes. So if you're missing one active enzyme. Doesn't really work like that, but that's basically how you can think of it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I will say is that I have seen people listen, like they say, oh, well, I only ever eat this veggie or whatever, and that's the only one I like, and that's the only one I eat. And I don't have any problems. And they're like, I don't have any problems. I'm like, not yet.
Have you looked at your gut under a microscope lately? No, you can't do that?
There are changes that occur in your body that you can't see happening, and they're cumulative. And so over time, you can develop like a really low immune system or low immune function. You can develop all sorts of things. And then here's the crazy thing. When this stuff starts happening and you're exhausted and you feel like shit and your white blood cell count is low and this is happening, your doctor is not going to know why.
Right.
That's the bad thing. Now all of a sudden they're doing all these tests on you and no one can figure out what's going on, and no one asks, what's your diet like?
Yeah. It's like all these really high-level athletes you see, they're in the midst, they're 3 weeks out from a huge meet, and then all of a sudden they're sick. They feel like shit. Nothing is working. Everything's starting to break down. Mm-hmm. It's because if you look at what they're eating, like, you can't fix your body on Oreos.
Right.
You can't.
You can't repair it. That's
I don't care if you hate vegetables. You need to puree that shit and chug it.
Yeah.
Like, eat your crap.
Yeah. So leading into veggies, I want to talk just really briefly about carbohydrates. And so we did a whole episode on manipulating carbohydrates for performance.
Yes.
And we touched a little bit on some of the health benefits but that was really geared towards performance.
And I'll link that in the show notes. So if you guys haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that and then come back to us.
Yeah, it was one of our early episodes. So basically, you want complex carbs in your diet. You want more complex carbs than simple carbs. So what that means is a complex carb is basically just a long chain of sugar molecules. That's it. A simple carb is a short chain of sugar molecules.
One is harder for your body to break down and one is easier. That's why when you work out, you eat Sour Patch Kids.
Yes.
So you can get quick energy.
Quick sugar. Mm-hmm.
But for a pre-workout, you have something like brown rice because it takes a lot longer to give you that energy, but it's sustained over a long period of time.
Right. I will say, actually, I have a hard time with complex carbs before I work out.
Well, and it depends on the person. Like, for me, I know that my favorite thing is to eat, like, oatmeal right before. Mm-hmm. And that's a great one. That will hold me for a while. And if I'm really feeling it, rice and beans, that'll hold me for a while. But it depends on the person. So, yeah, if you're one of these people that can't have super complicated carbs before, you could always kind of cheat the system and do quick oats, which are still kind of complicated, but are a little bit more processed, so they're quicker to digest. You just have to play with it.
Right.
Anyway.
So, basically, you want it when it's not training time, like middle of training and after training, you want complex carbs. If you can tolerate them before, go for it. But all the other times, you want complex carbs. And there's this whole debate, like carbs or no carbs, whatever. And I think that this all boils down to the majority of people, when they think about carbs, they think about simple carbs. And so they try to avoid them. So simple carbs are like sugar and heavily processed stuff. But complex carbs, we need complex carbs to stabilize our blood sugar, oddly, and for mood and energy.
Yes.
So they're really important. And as a strength athlete, they're really, really super important. Now, there are definitely some people out there that do keto and have strength gains and stuff like that.
And weight loss.
Right.
But this is the thing, I think you and I have talked about this a lot. Just because you've lost weight doesn't mean you're internally healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. Health is not a measurement of your weight. I mean, that's part of the picture.
And that's a great first step. But then you have to really think, okay, yeah, I've lost 30 pounds. Great. But, like, I did it eating Twinkies, so.
Right.
Maybe I need to think something else.
I once had a patient who told me that if I could come up with a way to market weight loss on a McDonald's diet, I would be a millionaire. And I was like, you're probably right, but I just so fundamentally disagree with that. I can't do it. I mean, this was already a movie, right? We saw what happened to the guy that did this.
Oh, he was
messed up. Yeah. So, anyway, so basically, you want a complex carb because, so basically a complex carb means your body has to work hard to extract the energy from it. So it slows down the digestion process and it keeps you satisfied longer while keeping your blood sugar stable. So this is super important. But again, go back to our manipulating carbs for performance episode, because we talk about when to break these rules for a strength athlete.
Yes.
So we don't need to get into all that now, because those of you that listen all the time have already heard it. All right. So that leads us to sugar.
Sugar.
Should we be eating sugar or should we not be eating sugar?
Well, it depends.
And how do you define sugar?
If you're a cancer cell in the laboratory and you feed them sugar, they will grow faster.
Right.
Fun fact.
Right.
If you deprive them of sugar, they don't grow fast.
It inhibits their growth. Right. So we should probably be eliminating sugar from our diet. Or you don't have to take it out completely. I'm a big fan of like the 80-20 rule. So follow all these rules like 80% of the time, and then like just have fun the other 20%, because what is life if you like never eat a cookie?
Depression.
Right. So, but you do want to eliminate as much simple sugar from your diet as you can, because chronic overconsumption of refined carbohydrates, and refined carbohydrates are defined as all sugars and starches except those that come from fruits, veggies, legumes, and coarsely ground grains. I'm going to get into the grain piece in a minute, because notice I said coarsely ground.
Coarsely.
Yeah. Anyway, so overconsumption of these carbohydrates promotes disease. Number one, it causes your body to excrete magnesium and calcium, which are super important for muscle and bone function. Why would we want to do that? Okay. It also induces oxidative stress, which leads to cellular damage. We don't want that. We don't want our cells to be damaged. And that, because that's a common pathway for cancer, aging, and various diseases. If you look at people that have a diet that has been low in refined sugar their whole lives, they look way younger than people that have crappy diets.
Yeah, so oxidative stress is basically when your body generates, and it has a lot to do with your mitochondria in your body. So mitochondria, basic cell biology, are the powerhouse of the cells. They are the one part of the cell that causes everything to function. They create the energy. And so in mitochondria, when they're working normally, they create what are called reactive oxygen species. Now, these are called ROSs. ROSs are typically taken care of by a healthy body. They have enzymes in there that will take care of those, and so they won't cause cellular damage. However, in a oxidative stress environment, those reactive oxygen species are not taken care of, and they cause damage to not only your mitochondria, which gives you energy to get that PR, but I forgot what I was saying.
Well, but the thing that you're talking about is when you talk about ROS, in nutrition world, I think it's talked about a lot as like free radicals.
Yeah,
right?
Same thing.
Yeah,
basically
it's the same thing. Yep. So you guys have probably heard the term free radical.
Free radicals happen naturally, but when you aren't taking care of your body, they are not gotten rid of in the cell, and then the cell becomes damaged.
Right.
And there's a chance that can damage the cell enough to make it a cancerous cell.
Right. So
Nerd 101. Let's move on.
Yeah, but okay, so another thing that chronic overconsumption of refined carbs does is it promotes fat deposit and obesity. So it promotes your body to store fat. That generally leads to things such as insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia, which is moving into diabetes. Mm-hmm. And then that causes an increased production in cholesterol, triglycerides, and other pro-inflammatory fats in the body. So, and the other thing that carbohydrates say, and I did this huge study on this when I was in professional school, is that refined carbohydrates reduce the function of leukocytes. Leukocytes are what your body needs to fight infection.
Leukocytes are part of your immune system. If
Right.
you don't have leukocytes, you're fucked.
Yeah, basically.
That's the most scientific way I could put that.
I love your scientific terms. So
what my dissertation is going to be like. If you don't have this, you're screwed. And if you don't have this, you're fucked.
Right. So basically overconsumption of refined carbohydrates, if we want to put it like into extreme terms, we're talking about messing up your bones and muscles. We're talking about leading towards diabetes, high cholesterol, and a really shitty immune system and cancer. So
I mean, I wouldn't even call that extreme because most of the American population, that's how they live. That's
right.
It. And they're already there. They're already insulin resistant. They're already pre-diabetic. Like,
right.
In the strength community, it's a little different because I'd say we're hyper aware of what we put in our body.
Right.
Even if we don't know exactly what to put in our body, we know what we ate.
Right.
Whereas most people, they look at convenience. We look more at how can we fuel ourselves.
Right.
Which is the whole reason we're doing this, to talk about why not just fueling yourself is important, but giving yourself all the micronutrients.
Right.
Okay, anyway. What's next?
Well, so the way to avoid that stuff is just avoid eating simple sugar, except for, and this is where athletes have to break the rule. You may if you need food during training, you need simple sugar, and then simple sugar after training is like an overloading principle to get that muscle glycogen, that energy back into your muscles so that you can recover. It's important to do that then. But otherwise, stay away. Eat complex carbs. And I really want to make a note about grains and not the whole like paleo debate because that's for another time, but grains in terms of processing. So
yes.
Finer,
like white versus brown rice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the finer the particle size of a grain, the quicker it digests and the more simple the carbohydrate becomes. So an example would be instant.
No. That was very complicated. Are you going to break that down for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So
I hope you guys are just as confused as I was with.
Okay, so let's talk about processing of a grain, right? How does a grain get processed? It gets ground, it gets like shucked or shelled or whatever it has to be. It gets ground down, and then so you can have coarsely ground grains. Like, let's talk about corn, okay? So we've all seen like cornmeal that's really coarsely ground.
Yes.
Actually, let's talk about oatmeal because this is the best. Everyone knows this. Fuck the corn, okay? Oatmeal.
Whoa.
Oatmeal. Mm-hmm. Does everyone know what steel cut oats look like? Like they're
Kristen.
they're like they look like little rocks and pebbles.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But then you've also seen like instant oats that are like flat and chopped and whatever. And then there's one in between that's like old fashioned or rolled oats.
Yeah. Rolled oats.
Yeah. Okay. So the steel cut oats are less processed.
Yes.
The instant oats are most processed.
Yes.
Okay. The only place to go from there is to make oat flour out of it. Okay. So oat flour would be like a very small particle size. And steel cut oats would be a big particle size.
Very big.
Right. So the smaller the particle size, the quicker it digests in your body, which the quicker something digests in your body, the more it's going to, if it's a carbohydrate, the more it's going to spike your blood sugar, right? Because your
body has to respond.
Your body has to respond to it. So it's going to spike your blood sugar, insulin comes in, and eventually, if you do that too many times, your pancreas is like, fuck you, I'm not giving you any more insulin, and now you have diabetes. But anyway.
Wow, that was a 24-hour period. We're done.
So basically, the more processed a grain is, the less fiber and nutrients it has, just due to the actual processing of the grain. And then the easier it is to digest.
Yes.
The more it's going to act like sugar.
Yes.
A simple sugar as opposed to a complex carb. That's it. So if you're going to, there's a time and a place for that, right? Like,
yes.
Instant oats might be great to eat after training.
Or even right before.
Or even right before if you're like me and you can't tolerate much food right before. See, that's the thing. I can't tolerate much digestion occurring when I train. So here we're talking about time of digestion, right? I have to eat simpler carbs right close to my training, and I eat complex carbs about 3 hours prior. So that's just how I've found to make it work through years of
trial and error. Trial and error.
Right. So talking a little bit about the processing of grains kind of leads us into this whole processed food debate.
Dun, 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 dun.
So processed foods are foods that...
Oreos, Pop-Tarts.
Yeah. So one of
granola.
My favorite nutrition authors is Michael Pollan. And one of his quotes that I absolutely adore is he says, eat food that is a plant, not that was made in a plant. Get it? Like a processing plant?
LOL. That was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about, like shop the perimeter of the grocery store. Yeah. That's where all of the things that are like single ingredients live. And then the things in the middle of the grocery store, like the chips and the granola bars and the whatever, things that have like these, if you look at the ingredients list.
Things that comes in boxes.
Things that come in boxes and things that have an ingredient list that's not like almonds, cranberries. Like if it has like a long ingredient list and it's not like a mixture of actual food, then it's processed. And so if you're looking at like Hamburger Helper is a perfect example. What in the fuck is in that? I don't even know. Oh, don't eat that shit.
Well, you find, like, for me, as a plant-based eater, like, I generally shop the perimeter anyway because every fucking processed food has some sort of animal product.
A lot of it has milk in it.
Yeah, milk or some type of animal product.
Right. Which is funny because I do that, but for a different reason, because I'm not vegan, but because everything that's processed generally has wheat in it.
Right.
And I have celiac disease. I can't have that. Okay.
I'm a pain in the ass by choice. Kristen is a pain in the ass by genetics.
Okay. So basically, when you're eating, so Mary and I, before we pushed record, we had a little debate that you guys might have liked to hear, but it was about processed foods and how I call them not real foods. And Mary's like, well, they're edible. And so, again, Michael Pollan talks about how they are processed foods with long chemical lists that you can't pronounce most of that shit. Sometimes those are actually vitamins, so that's okay. But like the actual vitamin name is kind of sometimes hard to say. But anyway, if it's got a bunch of weird stuff that you don't recognize, that's processed. Yep. And I would say that that's an edible food-like substance. Not my quote. That's Michael Pollan. But that's, a whole group of food, highly processed, is edible. I mean, technically, it's food, but it's not real food.
It's not food that was grown.
It's not whole food.
There.
And
I can agree to that.
Right. Okay.
I can agree.
Right. So, I'm not saying, like, don't eat anything that comes out of a box or a package. Like, I'm not saying that.
Let's be honest. That shit's good.
But
that's good. The point. That's like why the ingredients are there, because it makes you addicted to it.
Right.
You find, so one thing that I found once I stopped eating meat and dairy and all that stuff, so I couldn't eat a whole lot of processed foods, it took me a while to get over the fact that the foods didn't taste like food. But now my palate has adjusted, and I love the taste of plain oats, where before I was like, what the fuck is this?
Well, because there was so much sugar and so much salt in processed foods. And so your taste buds get used to that. And so, plain oats probably tasted like crap. Anyway, so processed foods also, just due to the nature of processing, they are nutritionally stripped, and then they have to add vitamins back in, which is weird. And they're lacking antioxidants. We talked about the free radicals. We need antioxidants in our diet.
Antioxidants are what stops the free radicals from doing bad things to your cells.
Right. All right. So let's talk about the big subject. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So this is
I'll try to keep my veganism on the low.
So this is the big debate. Mary is vegan, mostly for ethical reasons, but for health reasons.
Yeah.
For health reasons. And also because Mary is a huge animal lover. And
it makes me cry.
and she wants to punch me in the face because I eat cows.
Sometimes, but
Basically.
I don't. And I call that self-control.
So we're going to talk about meat because I want to talk to you guys about protein and fat. And I can't talk to you about protein and fat without talking about meat at the moment. So a lot of you guys are big meat eaters. Fine. That's cool. I'm on board with that. But you need to know that like conventionally raised, what we now call conventionally raised animals, so think like the big feedlots and all that, that animal protein is super high in inflammation promoting omega-6 fats, and it's low in omega-3 fats. And until the 1950s, we used to have a good ratio. So omega-6 fats are important in our diet. Everyone talks about getting enough omega-3s, and that's because since the 1950s, we've been lacking omega-3s in our diet. The omega-3 fats are EPA and DHA, which are short for like really long words that I'm not going to say right now.
Nope.
Anyhow, we need omega-6s. We actually need like a 50-50 ratio.
Yes.
But like we get way more omega-6. Omega-6 fats, when consumed in excess, lead to cardiovascular disease, cancer, high blood pressure. All right, so we talked about how traditionally raised animals are sick. They're sick. They have high omega-6s, not a lot of omega-3s, which we need a good ratio. Okay, so I'm going to present to you guys a problem here, and we're going to figure out how to solve this together. All right, so think about it this way. We know omega-6 fats, when consumed in excess, lead to cardiovascular disease, cancer, and high blood pressure. Okay, so, and also super inflammatory. We don't want inflammation. We're creating enough inflammation through training, right? We don't want that. Okay, but strength athletes, so us, we need double the amount of protein that a sedentary person needs. Double. Okay, so a good rule of thumb to start with for a strength athlete is looking at multiply your body weight times 0.7 to 0.9. That's how many grams of protein that you need. Okay, if you're, you can go on the low side of that if you are over 25% body fat, and on the high side if you're below 20%. So somewhere in the middle if you're between 20 to 25% body fat. Okay, so that's a pretty decent amount of protein that we need.
Yes.
Protein is needed to repair your muscles, your connective tissue from training, fight infections, build and maintain muscle, gains. You need protein for gains. Insufficient protein can cause muscle weakness. What the hell? Do not want that.
Not cool.
Suppression of the immune system and impaired healing and recovery from training and injury. Okay. So now we have a conundrum because we need a lot of protein, but you can't eat too much animal protein, right? Because I just told you that conventionally raised animals are really high in omega-6 fats that are pro-inflammatory and are going to cause all this problem. So what the fuck are we supposed to do? This is the piece that I think is really missing from the strength world. So, and I think actually CrossFit does a decent job of talking about it because they're on the paleo bandwagon. Yeah. But, okay. So you have two options. One, we're going to talk about my option, what I do, and then we're going to talk about what you do. Okay. So I said traditionally raised animals are bad. They have too much of the other fat. But grass-fed and pastured animals have a much higher omega-3 ratio to omega-6 ratio. Remember, we talked about we need both, but they have way more omega-3 fats. They tend to be much healthier animals. So that is how you get around this inflammation, cancer-promoting animal fat, but I need all this protein. How do I get around it? Eat healthy animals. Grass-fed cows that are fed grass, pigs that have been pastured, and then hens and chickens that are free range. Mm-hmm. By the way, I always see in the grocery store vegetarian fed, like eggs from vegetarian fed hens. Hens aren't vegetarian. They eat bugs. I don't understand. I feel a little confused by this. Like, chickens love bugs. They eat bugs, and it makes for healthier eggs.
I'm not sure if vegetarians consider bugs part of their, like, no-eat list.
Oh, okay.
Mainly because vegetarians don't eat bugs.
Right. So I think what they're talking about is because when a chicken is a free-range chicken, it's just allowed to roam around.
Yeah.
And they spend the whole day, I have chickens, I know this, they spend the whole day scratching and looking for bugs.
Right.
They love bugs.
Yeah.
But when you supplement their feed, I think that it's vegetarian feed. So whatever.
Well, and, you know, when they're commercially raised, they are fed just complete dog shit, so.
Right. Oh, they have horrible lives.
Oh, yeah, It's horrible.
So this is really interesting because cows that are fed grain produce a lot of omega-6 fats because of what happens in their digestive system. They have four stomachs. They're rumen, yeah.
Because they have to chew, cough up, chew,
right.
until it can actually go into their intestine.
Right. So that alone creates a lot of arachidonic acid, which is the pro-inflammatory omega-6.
Bad.
And then we end up eating that. And so this was what actually convinced me to give up grains for a while, because I was like, are we like cows? Like, does that happen in our body too? That's the whole paleo debate, is are you going to... that grains are promotion.
Yeah. Well, but they're
inflammation promoting.
They're only fed, like, I mean, they are really fed just dog shit. They are fed one type of diet all the time. It's mainly corn. Like, it's nonsense.
Right.
So then the other part, so how do I go around it? How do I get my protein? Because that's always, it's like, the first thing people learn about me when they learn that I'm vegan, they're like, oh, cool, you're vegan. And then the next question is, so where do you get your protein? Mm-hmm. And Kristen and I were talking before we started recording the podcast, and one thing that she said that I disagree with is that it's insanely difficult to, you know...
I didn't say insanely. It is difficult.
I added in insanely.
She's exaggerating.
I'm trying to make it more dramatic.
She's trying to make me look like an asshole.
She's not an asshole. I love Kristen. But she said it's more difficult and it's harder to do, which, true. So when you first decide to give up meat, obviously you're going to have to learn what is what and how do you get what you need. And that does take a while. It took a couple months for me to learn, how do I get a sufficient amount of protein in a day? What do I eat? How do I get everything that I need? So
I want to get into what you eat in a minute, but first I want to talk about amino acids, because you guys are going to understand why this is an important piece here that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So protein contains amino acids. They're building blocks of muscle tissue, basically. Mm-hmm. Okay. They also help form neurotransmitters and hormones in our body, which is really important. So it's not just muscle. Okay. So there's 20 amino acids. 9 of those are essential, meaning our body can't make them. We have to get them from our foods. Adults only need 8 of those. One of them is just for children, which is histidine. That's only needed by infants. The other 8, though, we have to get through our diet. Animal protein contains all 8 essential amino acids, okay? So it's important that we have to be getting all 8 of these every single day. And that's called a complete protein. So animal protein is by nature a complete protein. End of story, no big deal. You don't have to think about it. That's why I said it's harder, because so for you, the only plant sources of complete protein are soy and quinoa. Mm-hmm. Okay. So... And that's saying that they have all of them. That they have all 8 essential amino acids. So you can pick and choose. You have to do food. You have to food pair. And so you have to be conscious. That's why I said it's harder. Because if you are not aware of your diet and you're not really thinking about it, you're like, well, I'm just going to be vegan and I'm not going to, think about the food quality and all of that stuff. Yeah. You're probably going to become protein deficient. But... Yeah. I mean, you literally... Yeah, it took a while. Stuff together. Well, and honestly, there's a lot of good apps out there and good software, people who've already figured this shit out. Right. They're like, here, if you've had this today, that means you've had this, this, and this. That means you still need X. Right. So it took me a couple months of just doing that and filling out. It was basically a checklist every day. Did I get all these categories of foods? Okay, that means at the end of the day, I've had everything that I need. Yeah. And now I'm at the point where I just it's just plug and chug, man. Okay, I need this and this type of food. I'm going to pair these two together. Yep. So it's not impossible. The argument I would make is that, yes, becoming a vegan is difficult at first, and it is
I do it for ethical reasons. It makes me cry to think that Kristen eats meat. I'm a very emotional person, so I can put myself in the shoes of the cows, and I like just cry all the time. But it's also, it's not as difficult as you might think. So anyone who wants to become healthy and they're eating a shit diet, they have to learn how to eat a healthy diet. That's difficult too.
Yep. So all diet changes are hard.
Yeah. So it's not that that's a barrier. It's just that it's a learning curve. Everything's a learning curve.
Right. And it just makes it harder as a strength. It's not impossible. It can absolutely be done, and you prove it can be done. But as a strength athlete, it's a little bit more difficult because you need this much more protein. You need double the amount of protein that a normal person needs.
Yes.
And you have to make sure that you are getting the right amounts. Right. So you use an app to track it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yep. I didn't even know that existed.
It's called My Daily Dozen.
Okay.
And so it goes through, actually I have it written on my whiteboard. You have 3 servings of what's called beans a day. So that's can choose like lentils, beans, tofu, tempeh, stuff like that.
Legumes.
Legumes, yes, that's part of it. And then you get 1 serving of berries, 3 servings of other fruit. You get 1 serving of cruciferous, so like broccoli and cabbage and
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts, yeah.
My favorite.
1 of those a day. You get 3 other vegetables, so green, yellow, purple, whatever. And you get 1 serving of flaxseed a day, so that's considered 1 tablespoon. And then 1 serving of nuts, which is considered 2 tablespoons of peanut butter or a 1/4 cup of whole nuts. And then 3 whole grains, which is 1/2 cup of whatever you want. And then water, obviously. And spices. They include spices on that. So turmeric. Turmeric is the only spice that this app says this is what you need.
So if you guys don't know, turmeric is very, very, very anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, anti-cancer. It's amazing.
Yep.
But the thing, so as a strength athlete, I need more than 1/2 cup of whole grain. So all my whole grains are increased to 1 cup. And even my beans, I've increased, like the legumes and stuff, it's increased to 1 cup. So for those parts, I double. But for the most part...
How do you not wind up eating 500 grams of carbs a day?
I do. I eat about 400 grams of carbs a day.
Okay.
I eat, and you know what? The thing about having a vegan diet is you eat a shit ton of carbs.
Yep.
A moderate amount of protein, but for me it's a lot more. But you eat a pretty low amount of fat.
Okay.
So it balances itself out. Not entirely sure how it works.
Sure.
Yet, but I'm not complaining at 400 grams of carbs a day.
You're figuring it out.
I'm happy.
So, one of the things too that is a really like a traditional pairing of food is beans and rice.
I fucking love beans and rice. Add some cornbread in there. Oh my God. It's like my favorite meal.
Beans and rice that makes a complete protein. So that's like a really traditional vegan pairing of...
It's so cheap.
All right, so you touched on fat. We talked about fat earlier, and I really want to talk about fats because this is another thing that I am horrified with in the nutrition community.
Yes.
As it relates to athletes.
Specifically, let's talk about female health.
Yes. So I want to talk about fats for hormone health. And so fats are building blocks for hormones.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. And I'm not just talking about sex hormones like that make our menstrual cycle healthy. I'm talking about there's all other kinds of hormones. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, which is a hormone. There's a million hormones in our bodies. Tryptophan is a hormone.
Tryptophan, dopamine, all that good stuff.
Things that make our brain work right.
Yeah, man.
Things that make our reproductive system work right.
Yeah, man. Things
that make our endocrine system work right,
the whole thing.
Our immune system. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of fats and hormones on the cell?
What do you mean?
How they affect cell health at the cellular level.
So fats are made
like lipids.
Yes, fats are made up of lipids. Lipids are what your body uses to make cells. So you can have different kinds of lipids. You can have what are called saturated fats, which they're not complicated. So they fit right next to each other. They're a lot easier to digest. They're saturated. Then they call it saturated with hydrogen bonds. So there's lots of hydrogen bonds.
That's right. There's hydrogen bonds on all of
everything.
Yeah.
So if you know anything about chemistry, you know that there's single bonds, double bonds, and triple bonds. Now, when you get to an unsaturated fat, that means that there's not not completely filled with hydrogen molecules. They have double bonds. They have triple bonds. So you see a lot in the news that you want unsaturated fats, things that are a little bit more complicated and that don't build up in your system. So if you don't have unsaturated fats in your diet, your cells are just going to go fucking nuts, man.
Right. Your cells won't function properly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the symptoms of that are loss of menstrual cycle.
Woo!
Polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Which is a huge one we hear in the strength community.
Huge problem.
Yeah.
Adrenal fatigue.
Yep.
Thyroid problems.
The whole thing.
Depression. Anxiety.
Yes.
Sleep problems. Melatonin is a hormone that
Yeah.
needs to be made. Okay. So melatonin affects our sleep. That's why people take
Supplement melatonin to go to sleep. Yep.
Okay. So fats are super, super, super important to the health of our body.
Yes.
Women need to be getting a minimum of 30% of their caloric intake needs to be coming from fat.
Absolutely.
In order to maintain appropriate hormone health for reproductive function and other
overall
functions.
function.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you can drop that down short term if you're trying to lose weight. That can be a short term 12 to 24 weeks. 24 weeks would be pushing it. If you're working with a nutrition coach who's aware of this kind of stuff, then you're probably okay. Who is aware and is not going to push you into this. So that's one thing I track all my female nutrition clients for possible hormone issues because we need to fix this.
Yes.
So you've got to be eating the appropriate amount of fat. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people following a really low fat diet. So people know that fat, like I think by now everyone knows like, okay, avocados are good for me. Olive oil is good for me. Like all these unrefined coconut oil. You guys know it has to be unrefined, right? It can't be refined because then it's no longer, doesn't have the healthy profile. Anyhow. Okay. So, and fish oil.
Yes.
We totally didn't even talk about fish and the whole meat thing, but fish that's high in omega-3. So salmon and
typical bodybuilder foods.
Exactly. So mackerel is a good one. Shrimp. Anyhow. Okay, so people know that they need fat, but when you start counting macros and you start breaking down, well, I need this much protein and I need carbohydrates for energy, for training.
Fats kind of fall to the wayside.
Fats are the one that get cut because fats are the highest in calories. It's 9 calories per gram as opposed to carbohydrates and protein, which are 4 calories per gram. So fats are kind of the easier one to cut, especially as an athlete, because you need the protein for recovery.
Yep.
And muscle growth. You need the carbohydrates to get through your dang workout. So maybe we're going to cut the fats.
Right, because you don't see the immediate effect of not having the fats.
Exactly. But if you go too long below, and I would say 30% for long term is even low. I just bumped mine up to 40% and I feel so much better. I was not having any real hormone health issues, but I was starting to get fatigued and I did have some blood work drawn and my white blood cell count was a little low.
Mm-hmm. Did you just get it drawn again after
I did.
Increase? So
Today. Yeah. So we'll see if there's any change to that. But that is leading into, I was like starting to feel not so good. I had a weirdo virus. Like I had some other things and I was like, what can I do? And I like really looked at my diet and I was like, you know what? I think I can get by on less carbohydrates. I'm going to bump up my fats and see how I feel. And I feel so much better. So that's kind of anecdotal, but fats are super, super, super important for us to be eating.
So
healthy.
Overall, if you were to look at an optimal diet, you would say no less than 30% of your diet, your daily consumption, needs to be fats.
Yeah, 30% of the caloric intake needs to be fat.
Caloric intake, sorry, yes, that's what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
Take your body weight, multiply it by 0.7 or 0.9, adjust with that. You can fill the rest with carbs, but they need to be good carbs. Fruits, veggies, and whole grains.
Yep.
With the occasional treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Treats.
They're treats. They're not
Treats
staples.
Exactly. Right. So if you guys have any questions about that stuff, shoot us a message. I personally could talk about nutrition all day long. I try to not talk about it too much because once I start, I can't stop, and I get really excited about it.
I don't know if you guys could hear, but she get really excited and start talking like this, and it was just amazing.
So, and if you want to refer to the show notes for the Manipulating Carbohydrates for Performance episode, again, if you have any questions, reach out to us at empoweredbyiron@gmail.com. You can always shoot us a DM on Instagram at empoweredbyiron, and we're also on Facebook at Empowered by Iron. And do not forget to join our new Facebook group. We'll link it in the show notes, but it's super easy. If you just open up your Facebook app, just search at the top for Women in Strength. The whole thing is called Women in Strength Athlete Resource, but it comes up really quick. Join it. That's a women's only resource for you guys, where we can talk about anything you want to talk about that relates to strength athletes. Maybe that doesn't even relate to strength athletes. Maybe just relates to us as humans, but we have some really good conversations that go on in there, so make sure to join. It's so much fun. So go in and even post a PR picture or video or whatever, or
just introduce yourself,
or tell us something you're struggling with or something that went awesome this week or whatever. It's a support network and a resource for you guys. So anyway, I think that's it. So thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you guys. Bye.